The actor Alec Guinness, Obi-Wan Kenobi to some of you, wrote in his memoirs that notable spiritual retreats he had taken to various monasteries. He was a convert to the Roman Catholic faith. He described in one monastery meeting a very serious young monk, exuding extreme gloom. As they were leaving after breakfast that morning, he stopped Guinness on the steps. "You're in films, aren't you?" he asked almost malevolently. "Sort of," Guinness replied. "I don't go to films," the monk hissed. Guinness records that he sensed rising hysteria. Then the monk screeched, "And I never will, until they do away with sex." Mind you, this was an opinion expressed about the British films of 1955. Later that day, Alec Guinness was walking through the monastery garden with the abbot, the head of the monastery. The abbot asked him, "Mr. Guinness, what do you think is the most difficult part of being a monk?" Guinness replied, "Other monks." The abbot gave him a long look and said with a response, both sighing and solemn, "Yes." When Alec Guinness discovered again that day in 1955 was that living with others is often difficult. It is difficult even in the relative peace of a Cistercian monastery. It is difficult even when we truly love others to understand how they think and why they act. Why do some people like numbers while others like ideas? Why are some people on committees always trying to bring the meeting to closure while others would prefer to leave some matters unresolved? Why do some people believe in hard facts while others insist that decisions include the feelings of others, the human element? Why do some people prefer being alone or in small groups when others prefer the bustle of a crowded concert? Today I want to share with you something that I learned that helps me understand others and to respect my differences with them. As a Unitarian Universalist, I seek tools to improve communication and understanding as I affirm and promote the inherent worth and dignity of every person, as our movement's first principle states. And such a tool exists. There are many such tools, of course, but today I would like to examine one in particular. It's a system developed to help us name and appreciate and successfully deal with some of the more important differences between us. It's called the Myers-Briggs Type Indicator. It's familiar to many of you as simply the Myers-Briggs. The Myers-Briggs is a way of identifying personality types. It was developed in the 1950s by Isabella Myers and her daughter Isabella Briggs from ideas put forth by the Swiss psychiatrist Carl Jung in the 1920s, and it has been widely used in schools and workplaces to cultivate understanding, effective communication, and cooperation in groups. It is estimated that during the 1990s, that more than 1 million people were taking the Myers-Briggs each year, and it probably accelerated. Today, I will not give you a comprehensive lesson in the Myers-Briggs with its 16 personality types with their characteristic strengths and blind spots. It's far more that I could be talked about this morning. It should be acknowledged that the Myers-Briggs personality inventory has been abused in the past by individuals, governments, and corporations seeking to define people into narrow categories, prohibiting some from realizing their dreams. But I cannot condone that kind of thing. However, this is a tool. There are many tools that we have to understand each other. And the Myers-Briggs tells us about working with each other based upon our personality. It's based upon the concept that everyone possesses 4 polarities, 4 areas of preference or predisposition. The Myers-Briggs hold that these dispositions are inborn and stay more or less with us for life. This is not something that is completely validated. A debate about inherent personality inevitably leads to the nature or nurture debate about inborn or acquired individual traits. Leave it to say that the Myers-Briggs believes that personality traits are inborn but expressed through experience. In other words, you might have the same personality type as Richard Nixon, but that doesn't mean that necessarily you're going to be like Richard Nixon. And we hope you won't be. The other point to make is that there's no perfect human personality. The Myers-Briggs assumes that every personality type has strengths and challenges, assumes an equality of personality and that everyone has a right to be the person she or he truly is. In the Christian scriptures, the Apostle Paul wrote to the Romans, "We have been given gifts that differ according to the grace given to us." In other words, our differences are to be seen as gifts rather than problems. And as Henry David Thoreau wrote, in the language of his time, if a man does not keep pace with his companions, perhaps it is because he marches to the beat of a different drummer. Let him step to the music which he hears, however measured or far away. We should accept our differences and also follow the path that moves each of us. With that in mind, the first of the Myers-Briggs poles is extroversion or introversion. Everyone but the most hermit-like of us needs to be in a group occasionally. Everyone also experiences the need to be alone sometimes as well. We vary only in the inclination to be with others or to be alone. It's a matter of degrees. In terms of Myers-Briggs, extroverts get their energy from being around others. Being in a crowd excites them, and they are the last ones typically to leave a party. They often think with their mouths open, expressing their thoughts openly. My son is definitely an extrovert. He was born an extrovert. Introverts in the Myers-Briggs are not necessarily shy, as the word goes in common parlance. Rather, they are inclined to stay to themselves. Introverts get their energy from within and find that large groups are exhausting. It's not that introverts don't like people and extroverts do. It's not that introverts don't have social skills and extroverts do. God knows I've known a lot of extroverts who didn't have any social skills. And they talked with a lot. My roommate in college was a shy extrovert in terms of Myers-Briggs. He liked being in crowds, but did not like attracting attention to himself. Now, the complication for him in his life was that he was 6'6". He always attracted attention wherever he went. He would be in a crowd, and he would be popping up in every crowd above everyone else. My introduction to Myers-Briggs was through this same friend. He was in seminary in another religious movement and gave me a short form of the Myers-Briggs from a book. I remember when he read out the question, when you are presented with a problem, do you think about it silently to yourself before responding, or do you immediately start talking about it? After 2 minutes of dead silence, while I considered the answer, I looked up to see him grinning ear to ear. I guess I answered that one. The second Myers-Briggs pole is sensing and intuition. That must be strangely named. Sensing is better named observant. Sensing types pay attention to details. They are realistic and practical. Give them concrete situations to focus on, not a lot of theories or speculation. Sensing types believe that facts speak for themselves. Intuitive types might be better considered imaginative. They pay attention to ideas and abstractions. They see not what is there, but what could be. They perceive connections and meanings. Intuitive types believe that facts illustrate ideas. Sensing types, with their emphasis on bare fact, often dismiss intuitive types as having their heads in the clouds or as annoying dreamers. Intuitive types may in turn become impatient, with the slowness of sensing types to see possibilities and broader implications. But we need both the practical realist and the starry-eyed dreamer to move us. Sensing types cannot see the forest for the trees. Intuitive types cannot see the trees for the forest. We both need to see both. What about Unitarian Universalists? The Unitarian Universalist movement nationally reflects the opposite of the demographic spread, with 3 out of 4 being intuitive types. We tend to be oriented towards ideas and always envisioning new possibilities in science, the arts, and society. To outsiders, we may appear as hopeless dreamers. For us, sometimes it seems that the rest of the world cannot make intuitive leaps into ideas. We're often impatient. Now, as I have served Unitarian Universalist congregations in eastern Pennsylvania, northern Delaware, and southern and central New Jersey, I have come to the conclusion this region is more inclined toward the sensing, detail-oriented folks. That may be because of the influence of the industries in this area. I experienced this in the first congregation I served in interim ministry in eastern Pennsylvania. The congregation I served had a newly formed membership committee. The congregation was more than 50 years old and had just started thinking about membership growth. I wonder how long it'll take them to get to other places. It was appropriate then, as their Sunday worship services often had standing room only at the back of the sanctuary. So they had a lot of people coming in and visiting, and there was an adequate seating in their worship space. So I attended the first meeting with the membership committee, which had been in existence for only a few months before my arrival as their interim minister. I had prepared for the meeting by devising a plan for membership growth, and it was perfect. I was like that little penguin. The committee spent the first, and I was so excited to be showing them their first membership plan that I had devised. The committee spent the first 30 to 45 minutes talking about who would refresh the visitor cards and the golf pencils, and whether they needed to order extra visitor cards and golf pencils. 45 minutes. 45 minutes. I had hid my impatience well, I hope. Finally, they gave me the floor, and I presented with a flow chart behind me, the newsprint, my grand design for the membership committee that next year. We were going to have classes. We were going to have follow-up with potential new members and things of that sort. It was a good plan, if I do say so myself. At the end of the presentation, the committee approved the plan, and then we went to sort of the rest of the meeting, debating whether they should provide snacks or lunch for the potential members. They debated what kind of food they should be offered and the soft drinks that they should serve. I left the meeting feeling slightly annoyed. I had given 10 minutes to my plan, and then they immediately went into the details. But then I remembered the Myers-Briggs personality types and realized that the committee had gone to a place that I normally would not go as an intuitive type. I needed their attention to detail. Essentially, they equipped the new members class to be more successful. And it's something I had not thought of, but it took me a while to realize that they were doing exactly what I needed to do. Let me come up with a big vision, and then they were going to implement it. And I appreciated them for their ability to fill in all the details. The third Myers-Briggs polarity is between thinking and feeling. Everyone thinks and everybody feels. But some of us are inclined to make decisions by thinking through a line of reasoning, by analyzing and citing impersonal objective principles. These are thinking types. Others tend to make decisions based upon relationships. How will they feel about it? They generally seek out harmonious relationships. They're feeling types. This is the only polarity in the Myers-Briggs that is gender-oriented. More women tend to be, or people who identify as female, are inclined to be feeling types, and more males are inclined to be thinking types. But it's not a major difference. It's 60-40 either way. One of the things you need to know about this split is that cultural norms are very difficult for the male who relies on feeling and the female who relies on thinking as a preferred process. We have sexism can work both ways, in ways that we're not often familiar with. Sometimes they have the people who are experiencing this have an inner conflict between what is going on inside and the expectations that society places on their gender roles. Among Unitarian Universalists, I suspect that more women are thinking types than found in the general population. Thinking matters, feeling and relationship also matter. The last polarity is most confusing, judging and perceiving. Judging does not mean judgmental, it means inclined towards order and closure, getting things clear and closed-ended, putting things into their place. Perceiving does not mean perceptive. It means preferring to keep things open-ended and unsettled, always looking towards possibility, always wanting to take in more information. Judging types prefer to have schedules and deadlines. Perceiving types prefer to take it as it comes, open to exploring options and possibilities. If a group has all perceiving types, they may never bring anything to closure. You might never get a final answer out of them. If a group has all judging types, they might reach closure too soon without taking time to weigh all the options of the balance. These polarities, indeed all the polarities that were talked about, are complementary to each other. Every group of people needs to have all these kinds of personalities represented in order to counteract the excesses of any particular type. The broader implication of the Myers-Briggs is the old aphorism, it takes all types to make a world. I know that as an introverted, intuitive, feeling perceiver, I need the people who annoy me the most. In my terms, they were the loudmouth, unimaginative, blunt, insensitive, stubbornly opinionated types. And if you're like that, I'd still love you. Because that's what we do in a religious community. You know their type, whatever your Myers-Briggs personality. They are people who annoy you at times. They push you to complete a project before you think it's finished, or the person always turns things in late. They are coldly logical or too emotional. They're in the clouds or an unimaginative bore. They are the talkaholic or the dangerous loner. They are the people you do not always feel comfortable around. There might be coworkers or spouses or parents or children. Can you think of conflicts or misunderstandings in your own life that might stem from one of these polarities? As I said, I'm an introvert. My wife is an introvert. We gave birth to an extreme extrovert. If he's awake, he's talking. And sometimes it's difficult to ask him to be quiet. I served a congregation years ago as interim minister. For the board retreat, I asked the board to take a short form of the Myers-Briggs and bring the results to the gathering. And we talk about the strengths and challenges of the board and the way that we commuted and the ways of functioning together that we valued. It was a good, talk of, it was supposed to bring forth a conversation. Of the 8 members of that church board, 7 were introverted, sensing, thinking, judging types. 7. There's not a lot of thinking diversity in this board. Board meetings never involved a lot of conversation. They made decisions based upon factual details, not based upon a wider vision or ideals or even harmonious relationships. And they tended to consider the meeting a success only if everything was decided by the end. Totally business-oriented, but not attuned to the congregation's mission necessarily. They were a wonderful group of people to work with. and they needed to be thinking about things differently. There was one member, that one member of that board who was not an ISTJ was an ENFP. Some of you realize that's the opposite of the ISTJ. And he mentioned that he was constantly frustrated with the way the meeting went. And we decided during that retreat that we would pause at times just to check in with each other, to see how things were going, and to get things, to check in with each other on how we're feeling about things, which was not something they felt comfortable with initially. Understanding how people work is a religious matter. Our personalities frame our conflict and our play. Our choices in homes and cars, our beliefs. A Universalist writer in the 19th century typified Unitarianism as a religion of the head and Universalism as a religion of the heart. In Myers-Briggs terms, he saw Unitarians as thinking types and Universalism as feeling types. With the merger of the two religious movements in 1961, it must have seemed like the thinking Unitarians had swamped the feeling Universalists. As we move through this year, may we find ways to understand and learn about each other. It is a central part of who we are as Unitarian Universalists. Our first principle, which affirms and promotes the inherent worth and dignity of every person, is taken directly from an earlier religious affirmation in our denominations, our movements, Universalist heritage. In 1935, the Universalist Church of America added a bond of fellowship and statement of faith to the historical profession. One of the clauses in that document avows faith in the supreme worth of every human personality. That Universalist statement tells that the human sentience is of worth and that personality, with all its differences, is still a matter of religious importance. This idea is also found in the bylaws of this congregation that state, among other things, that the purpose of the Unitarian Universalist Church of the Lehigh Valley shall be to affirm, defend, and promote the supreme worth and dignity of every human personality. Peter Richardson, a Unitarian Universalist minister, wrote a book about the Myers-Briggs personality types and spirituality. The basic thesis of his work is that one grows spiritually by experiencing the world from the opposite poles of personality. Introverts grow spiritually when they come to a large community, like a church, become energized by the group. Intuitive types often grow by taking on spiritual disciplines that require attention to detail. Thinkers often grow when they endeavor to understand the emotional complexity of others in relationships. Perceiving types grow when they find the terms under which bringing things to conclusion feels right. We struggle with our ideals. Sometimes we have a vision for creating a perfect world. When we're doing so, we just need to listen to the kind of person who says, it's great to build this world of justice, to live these great ideas, but while you're doing it, you're going to need more 2x4s. We have to be practical. As we live in religious community, we need to understand our differences and appreciate the gifts that each person brings to the larger whole. One of the aspects of developmental ministry, indeed all transitional ministries, like interim ministry, is the spiritual community comes to know itself better and considers its strengths and challenges. Sometimes it helps to understand the processes by which the sacred community makes decisions. As this congregation has not had a real transitional ministry in more than 20 years, taking time to recognize itself, getting to know yourselves, may be an important way to envision growth and change. In the end, it is our ability to understand that the human pattern is incomplete without the fullness of every color and shape, every size and every thread of faith, and every variation in every personality that makes us the Unitarian Universalist we are. And there are so many ways to be a Unitarian Universalist. For if we are not here to proclaim the sacredness in the human soul or personality, then why are we here?